Group B, it was the only time. It never will come back, I think. And it was a highlight in my career. It was fantastic. I like it.
Well, welcome to a new Dave's Classic Garage Tours video, and today I'm bringing you something rather special. Meet Keith. He's been into rallying since a youth, and in particular Group B since it became the leading rally class in the WRC from 1982 to 1986. Well, Keith's also an engineer and somewhat handy on the tools, and one car he's always admired is Lancia's Monte Carlo based 037. So 8 years or so ago, he decided to build his own. Now, there's a few tribute and replicas of this Italian marvel out there, but none, as you're about to find out, quite like Keith's. Okay, so final checks, Keith.
Yeah, we'll just dip the fuel, old school. So we've got about 40 litres, so 20, 40, 60 litres.
Right.
Takes about 65 litres. So
Okay.
that will do, on the highway, probably 400, 500 kilometres.
Rightio.
Competitive, 200.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. And that's more reliable than an electronic gauge, is it?
Oh, it is. I have a gauge, but it's not much chop. It's Italian.
Right. Okay, so let's get a bit of background on the Lancia Rally to give it its official name. It was the last two-wheel drive car to win the World Rally Championship before the four-wheel drive era really kicked into gear.
Four-wheel drive, is this the way cars are going in the future?
Hannu Mikkola's win with the revolutionary Audi Quattro heralds the arrival of a new era in rallying. The age of the supercar has arrived. Four-wheel drive and turbocharging are the keys to success, and all future serious contenders must heed the warning.
Well, not quite. The Audi Quattro might have won the World Championship in 1982, but it was the Lancia's turn the following year, and it could still have secured Walter Roll the driver's title, beating out Hannu Mikkola's Quattro, had Lancia not had such a low regard for the driver's championship.
Welcome to the opening of the 51st Monte Carlo Rally.
Rallying is a dangerous sport. Does anything frighten you?
One thing, losing.
And it's the story of that year's championship that features in Race for Glory, Audi versus Lancia. The amazing new film set to wow audiences in the same way Ford versus Ferrari did a few years ago.
Let's go.
Of course, to reach the start line, Lancia were mandated to produce a minimum 200 road-going versions. They ended up making 207. Now, to go deeper on its origins, I suggest you seek out Roadster Life's video on the Monte Carlo or Scorpion, and you can see what Jay Leno thinks about the Stradale road car over on his channel.
That's what I like about it. It's a real world car. It is. You know, as much as I love my Carrera GT, it's so low to the ground. And gee, I mean, I just have to. There are roads I literally can't drive on because I know, oh no, there's a couple of potholes there. You know, whereas this is something you know, you just take it out and you throw it around.
And then there's David Cironi's quite exhilarating driving impressions of Walter Roll's 1983 Monte Carlo winning Group B car over on his channel. Amazing stuff. This, however, is Keith's tribute to the 037, and here's his story. Thanks for letting us come by today. It's an absolute joy to see that car, and after seeing it back in February, and it's now out on the road. We'll go out in a bit later. But so tell us first of all why you chose that particular car.
Group B came along overseas and I could not get enough of it. I wanted to have one. The cars that remain are beautiful cars and they're campaigned pretty heavily overseas. They're a lot of money. And I thought, well, I'm a little handy with the hands we'll give it a go. And I'll just build my interpretation. So I was lucky enough to come across the centre part of a shell, which was a wreck, and I just built it from the book. I got a book by Peter Collins.
Now, this is not a book of actual, like the blueprints or anything like that, is it at all?
No, it's just a story of Lancia and how they came about building the 037, and with sketches and drawings and little odds and pieces, and going saying, I can build that, that's no problem.
So tell us a bit that background you've got then, that gave you the confidence that you could do this kind of thing.
I've had my own business for quite some years, building heavy haulage equipment and working within that industry. So I was quite happy to work within steel. I don't like fiberglass much because it's very itchy. Some guys will go, oh, I hate working in steel, but it's a medium which I can take and mould, and I find it easy.
Yeah.
So I decided to build the body out of steel rather than aluminium. Consequently, I think it's about 200 kilos heavier than probably what it could be.
Right, okay.
You know, the originals had fiberglass and Kevlar.
Yes.
As in their composites.
Yeah.
So they were very, very light.
Yeah.
All the doors, the roof panels, basically the only steel in it was the subframes, the A pillars and the B pillars. So they became quite sought after. Group B has exploded again. Everybody's interest has been heightened. You know, WRC is great, but Group B had more money thrown at it than Formula One.
Yeah.
If there was a rally, there was a helicopter for every car, you know, and it was just nuts.
Yeah, yeah.
Really.
I mean, the most iconic motorsport footage ever, especially the Portuguese rallies, people getting out of the way of those cars coming over the hill and going through the towns and whatever.
I think Michelle Mouton, she said it very succinctly when she said she just had to treat everybody as a tree and drive through the forest.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if you looked at as people, they'd never go as fast as they did.
Yeah.
The Fathe stage, used for the first time last year, features the biggest jump on the rally. Most crews flying through the air to be confronted by a wall of spectators. Roll now has a lead of over 3.5 minutes over Biasion, despite driving at the absolute limit, as his damaged bodywork bears witness.
Ridiculous horsepower, and they didn't even have hydraulic handbrakes back then. You drove around the corner and you set it up and you did the Scandinavian flick and you did all old school sort of stuff. And I really liked it, and I thought, I'll build one. You know, it'll only take me 12 months. So 8 years later, it's on the road.
Right, yeah.
But
going back, tell us about your early years of rally cars ownership.
So I was lucky enough to get into it reasonably early. Some of my great friends introduced me to it. And back then, rallies were 2 or 3 every weekend. There was a rally.
Right.
And you know, $20, $30 entry fee, and away you went. And you could, you know, everybody went to a rally at the weekend, either competed or officialed. And so everybody was involved in it. So I had some Corollas that I went through, that I was lucky enough to have sponsorship from Franco-Foil and Rallyquip.
So you're pretty tasty on behind the wheel then yourself, if you're getting sponsorship.
I did all right. I wasn't the fastest guy out there, and I wasn't the slowest bloke.
Yeah.
But hell, I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know? And we did have a lot of fun back there, and it was great, you know. And you would reshell a car maybe twice a year.
Oh wow.
You know, if you had an off, you just go get another one and then rebirth it, and away you went, and that's how it was.
When did you realise when you had an aptitude on the tools and what have you?
I wasn't a very good scholar, and lucky enough to find an apprenticeship, and I became a carpenter. And along the time, I started to build cars and race with my mates and just round the streets, and it was a different era back then. You know, we never raced at home. We always went into the back paddocks, like completely the back paddocks, and let loose. And then we were always quiet at home because, you know, the neighbour would just come up and he'd give you a clip across the back of the head and, you know, don't do it again, you know, or I'm going to tell your mum and dad. And, No, it was never a problem. You know.
Yeah. Tell us about your car history. I mean, in the sense you had the Corollas, the rallying and whatever. Have you always picked a sort of a sportier? I see the big the SVR Jag F-Pace out there.
Yeah. I like different.
Yeah.
And when I got going, Datsun 1600s were like...
That's 510s to our American viewers.
Yes. P510s, And they were everywhere. Yeah. Everybody had one. And if you had one, you had the same as everybody else. You basically had a cam in it, and you put some 45s on it, and you drove the wheels off it. If you were lucky, you could buy an option 1 gearbox or an option 2 gearbox, which was the close ratio ones. And with Toyotas, it was always... Toyota was never sort of that forward thinking. They were quite well. Motor Improvements in Melbourne built a lot of clubman stuff for Toyota Corollas, and they were quite quick. But if you had something different, my philosophy was you're already 50% faster than the next guy, because he doesn't know what you've got. Yeah. He doesn't know how fast it is or whether you're a good driver, because there's nothing, they don't see that many. Yeah. So my passion for different cars has stemmed from that.
It's a 037. Are you terming that as a tribute to the Stradale or to the rally car?
A bit of both, really. The rally cars.
You said it's your interpretation. You don't. You're not trying to copy.
I like out of the Stradale, the back of the car especially. Yeah. The vertical venting is terrific. It's got good line. I like the way the guards hug at the back. When they went to the later model Evos and they dropped all of that and it just had the exposed back, a very racer sort of style, didn't impede mud or dirt, and they used to roll the mud flaps up. But I like the earlier road going version, although I don't like the 5 3/4 inch headlights. I like the bigger headlights out of the Evo ones.
Yes, yeah.
And so I just sort of blended it all together. I may have not quite got the proportions correct.
You showed me earlier in the book how you came across those proportions. Let's get it was quite amazing how, well, you're picking off pictures.
Yeah, I was looking for pictures where mechanics were working on the cars quite openly. And, perhaps we're,
you'd be able to look at the rake and
stuff and say, well, we know, certain people were of certain height, and a little Italian mechanic could only have a small hand, say to Walter Roll, or, and you just sort of guessed it, really. Yeah. And I sort of sat back, and I knew the wheelbase. The wheelbase is well documented, so it is the correct wheelbase.
You've got the correct wheelbase, haven't you? Yes.
So this is the Stradale back end here, and I love these little vertical strokes here. Yeah. And the way the fog lights are inset. I've changed mine a little bit, but I've just made it what I wanted.
What do you want? Yeah. So they've got to be off some Fiat Group car, aren't they?
They are. Like everything was just out of the parts bin. Yeah. Basically, the door handles here are the correct for Monte Carlo stroke Scorpion, as the window surrounds are.
Right.
And the mirrors were too. But they actually put 2 mirrors on, but in the road cars for the Monte Carlos, you had to option in the other side.
Yeah.
They're a bit cheap.
Let's just, I want to find those pictures, because it was just crazy how you were talking about...
Well, even just going back to, these are the original designs on the original letterheads that they penned out.
Yeah, yeah.
And they did this all so rapidly. This was the Scorpion that started.
Oh, right, yes, of course.
And then they just literally cut off the front and they cut off the back.
Yeah.
And then...
So the difference between the Scorpion and the Beta?
The Beta has almost a straight, flat roof line.
Right, okay.
It's a 4-seater, front-engined, east-west configuration. The Scorpion was the same engine.
Scorpion being the American name for the Monte Carlo.
And the Monte Carlo. The first series of Monte Carlos were the Beta Monte Carlos.
Yeah.
Then they just dropped Beta, and then they went to just a Monte Carlo.
Right, okay.
They had some brake reworks and other things like that. But
Yeah.
it tells the whole story of this book, and it was really informative to me, being able to go through and have a look. There's the, that is a Lancia Beta Monte Carlo Group 5.
Right.
Lancia had already started racing in Group 5.
Right.
In a silhouette class, and they ran a small capacity motor with a huge triple K turbo,
Yeah.
putting out some really big horsepower.
Yeah.
And they ran in the class below the Porsches, but they were always right up there.
The 935.
Yeah, they were always right up there pushing the Porsches.
Right, right.
And they were a very quick car.
Yeah.
And
But getting back to these, you know, you'll be able to look at that, you know, as some sort of, what do we look at here? I mean, we're going through that. There was, you know, you were putting your thumb up against things like this. Here we go. Being able to look at that, yeah, the angles in there.
I initially wasn't able to find much information or drawings on the internet with regard to that. So it was, to me, it was a lot of guesswork, and I ended up just trying to work out and making sure that the front wheel placement in the guards was correct.
Yeah.
And looking at the suspension components, and
it's just
unfortunately
amazing.
here in Australia, there's only probably 2 factory cars here in Australia.
Yeah.
And I haven't got access to either one of those.
Well, that's something we're going to be able to look forward to.
Putting
them side by side over 2024. Yeah.
In February the 17th, I think it is.
Right.
So I've been lucky enough to be invited back this year, which is great.
Yeah.
But the cars that are going to be there are phenomenal, and thankfully Shannon's have come on board and been very helpful as prime sponsors.
Yeah.
So the Historic Rally Association are really pleased to put it on.
Yeah.
So they're great.
Yeah.
So just looking at the book and building things and setting it up as well best I could.
Yeah. Now that to me looks a very, very short version of the car. And
well, the wheelbase is the same. It's 2.4 metres,
got that
centre to
overhang.
centre, but it's got, this is an Evo version,
Yeah.
a late model Evo with the hanging mud flaps and basically the back of the car cut off. And mine has probably got a little bit more meat in here,
Yeah.
maybe 1 or 2 inches, and consequently a little bit less in here.
Right.
Wow.
Did you, an Aussie, just to say inches? Of that generation? Or,
yeah, I was. I grew up, I did half my apprenticeship in feet and inches and the other half in metric.
Yeah, well, okay.
And I do remember pounds,
Right,
shillings and pence. Thanks very much.
Well, so tell us about the process then, I mean, it was just crazy, and I'm not going to ask you to go back over there because that was a bloody, you know, you can just see around here. Tell us about this tubing up here, for instance. Where did it come from, and what did you do with some of this?
I had a great steel supplier. I could go there and hunt through their racks on hours on end and pick out basically anything I needed, and I'd buy it from them on a weight basis. And, so I would, they would ring me occasionally and say I've got certain things, because my heavy haulage building trailers, I wanted all sorts of specialised metals, N36s, 4140s, you know, chrome bar, all this sort of stuff. So I would go up and I would buy what I was needing off them. And I was lucky enough one day they rang me and said, we've got half a sling of chrome moly tube there, and light wall chrome moly tube. And I said, oh yeah, I'll have that. And then another friend of mine, he welds up lattice work crane booms for a living. So he was able to supply some material that I was after for roll cages and stuff like that. So I've got the best quality material. I'm, you know, do welding by trade. And I just started putting it together, and I found it pretty easy in the end. But what I didn't know, I would go on the internet and teach myself. I wanted an English wheel, so I built one.
The car is swathed in 0.7 sheet
Steel,
from
Toyota.
From Toyota shutting down.
When Toyota shut down in Melbourne. And again, my steel supplier managed to purchase a job lot.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. I think there was about 8 tonne of it.
Yeah.
And I bought about a quarter of a tonne,
Yeah.
I think, of sheets.
Yeah.
But they're all odd sizes, so 1100 by 1200 sheets. So a full panel had to be made. Some of the panels that are made on the car are made out of 4 and 5 pieces,
Yeah.
all stitched together,
Yeah.
and just overlapped and then butt welded and then put through the wheel to smooth them all out.
I've seen some old wheels that are bloody well made, and you can see the weight in them. And I've seen a lot of Chinese repro or new stuff or whatever.
They move around
that looks like it's they ain't budging anytime soon. That one.
Yeah, no, it's got its own hydraulic rollers to get around.
Yeah.
You've got to jack it up. It takes 2 people.
It's
to
crazy.
push around
Yeah, well,
the shed.
I've already been over there.
Yeah.
Trampled over this lot once, so I'm not going to do that again. But also tell us about the. I really wish I'd had the camera going at that point, but that tubing that you, the body was made around. Tell us about that process.
Again, Stansfield's rang me up and he said, I've got this really light gauge seam tubing. And I said, yeah, keep it. And we had a discussion that went on. And then a couple of days later, I ended up going in there and I saw it. And I thought, you know what? The Superlegeras, they're all made out of tube and stuff like that. And I thought, why can't I do the same? I can basically shape the body over an outline of tube.
Yeah.
It's very light, it's malleable, you can bend it, you can weld it.
Yeah.
You can pretty much do anything you like. If you want a wheel arch, you bend it around a 44 or the tyre.
Yeah, right next to the 44 gallon. See that curvy bit there? That's what Keith just showed me, curling around that 44 gallon. And that's essentially how you...
Yeah, it's quick to do. And you could just do it and then just weld it up. And if you didn't like it, cut it, weld it, join it.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of steel, is, like you can just manipulate it any way you want.
Yeah.
And then you can form the body over the top. And if you don't like what you see, take it back and reform it.
Yeah. And then you were...
And my car is asymmetrical too, by the way. It is different from one side to the other.
Show me and then what you did with
just
that tubing.
As good bodybuilders do, they borrow from the aircraft industry with a Clico.
Wow.
So they come in 2 different
Let me make
sizes,
sure
an
I've got
1/8 and a 3/16.
Yeah.
And you just drill a hole, push it in, pop it in the hole, and it'll hold 2 or 3 sheets together and clamp them quite well. And once you've got them in position, you can just take one out, plug weld it, go on to the next one and the next one and the next one. And then your sheet's joined.
Yeah.
But you can...
And you've got a stronger body.
Yeah, well, you're just forming the body and you're forming curves and you're stretching and moulding the steel. You can only do a couple of things with steel. You can cut it, you can bend it, you can stretch it, or you can shrink it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's it. That's the end of it. And if you do that in the right order, you get a result. And if you don't, as I was learning, you get quite a fair bit of stuff thrown in the rubbish.
Right, right.
You learn every time,
Yeah.
and you get faster and faster.
What were those greatest obstacles in the process of building the car?
I think probably one of the hardest things that I had to cope with was just doing it on my own. And then I have a couple of great mates, really, really good mates, and they've been involved with the build right from the word go. And they bagged me enough that I would just keep going.
Yeah.
And, I'd chuck ideas at them and they'd give me their answers and their interpretations. Then I'd just go off and do what I wanted anyway. Right. But thankfully, they've stayed with me.
Yeah.
And they've both seen the fruits of the end of it. And it's a really good feeling to be hanging around with your mates in a car that was built from absolutely dead scratch. I kind of laugh a little bit. People go, "Oh, I built a car." Great. And I used to do it too.
Yeah.
And now I have built a car from scratch. I've machined the hubs, all the uprights. Everything has been basically done by hand, by scratch, first up. It's all gone through and been engineered and crack tested. It's been off an NDC'd. Everything that's gone into the car has been NDC'd.
Yeah, just in case we don't get that sound
That's
doesn't come through from
non-destructive testing.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So they'll do it with either ultrasound or electromagnetic particle spray or a 3-part dye spray. But basically, any structural component for that car has gone through that process. I'm not silly enough to chuck myself down the road in something that's not quite right.
Right. Yeah. How many miles you done?
3,934.
Right. Oh, right, there we go. Yeah, there we are.
Yeah.
So that was back in February I first saw the car. We're now about to hit December. So when did you get a roadworthy?
I got round to doing it about 3 months ago.
Right, okay.
And took it down with all its paperwork, and the only thing I had to do was put 2 new VIN numbers in it.
Right.
One up on the front suspension and one on the rear suspension.
Yeah.
Because the original Lancia VIN, difficult to read.
Yeah.
And my roadworthy guy suggested that we do that in case somebody wants to question as to whether it really is. So with the Vic Roads doing roadworthies now and everything on pictures and iPads, it's all in the original roadworthy, everything's done. All the pictures have gone through, all approved.
Tell us about the, getting it engineered.
I've worked with engineers pretty much most of my life, and the roadworthy guys who are Vic Roads accredited, they're easy to work with as long as you do what they want. And every process, every step we did, every component that was made was verified with crack testing and ultrasonic testing, non-destructive testing.
Yeah.
So everything that's in the car, even the components which have been manufactured 40 years ago, have been tested again.
Right.
All the uprights have done, and of course all new brakes. The calipers have all been completely rebuilt.
Yeah.
And everything has been tested and checked time and time again. So the process was quite easy. The dry build took 7.5 years.
Yeah.
Then we found once we got it painted, everything rushed forward. We could see more progress all the time going on every day, and it was difficult not to push it too fast and just make sure as we bolted it together everything was correct and all the suspension movements were correct, and then we fitted up the shock absorbers and the springs and we set it up, we weighed the car, we set the car up on scales, weighed it, and with 2 people sitting in the car, it's 1,220 kilos, and the weight distribution is 48% to the front and 52 at the back. It's fully fueled, ready to go. And it's 50-50 either side. So the balance is very good.
It's actually quite civil on the decibel front.
It's pretty good. I did expect it to be a lot louder, considering the engine's 8 inches behind you, and it's only 0.7 of a millimetre of steel between you and the engine. It is quite quiet for the moment. We're only cruising around.
No sound deadening in the floor and what have you, and whatever it seems.
There's no sound deadening in the vehicle at all. So.
Are these plastic up there? Yeah, that's...
yes, it's all Lexan windows.
Lex, all right. Great roads to do your test runs on as well.
I live in a very nice area for cruising around, and there's some terrific roads, and Cowtown's just across the hill.
Right.
So we're going to do some dirt testing in the next couple of weeks. We'll take it up and put it on the dirt and find out what it's going to do.
What do the engineers at Lancia do to the Beta to make it into the 037?
Well, the Beta Monte Carlo, which was basically the mid-engine version of the Beta, they chopped off from the front firewall forward. They lost all of that, and basically from the rear firewall, and made tubular subframes everywhere. So it's basically a silhouette racer of the car. The center shell where you're sitting is the only the only bit which is original. So your A pillars, your B pillars.
So is that on the actual Stradale, or this?
On all of them, yeah.
And what about your one? So what have you?
Same. So the front's completely all new and the back's all new as well. So
do you develop
the back I developed myself because I wanted to go with the configuration of engine that I had. Yeah. I was going to use a Lancia engine, and I procured a transaxle and was going to hook it all up and supercharge it with a Volume X. And I was in a hurry, and it just never happened. Yeah. And I thought the quick way to do this build is I'll use an east-west. I'll just use the front end out of another car and put it in the back and engineer that in there. I spoke with the relevant people. Yes, we could do that. And we treated the thing as a one-off. Yeah. So, you know, it had certain limitations and liabilities, and I had to meet all of those. I procured a Holden Calibra with the venerable red top engine, and I was lucky enough to get one with an early Concast head, which is the best head for them. And we've rebuilt that. We haven't done a lot to it as yet. We thought we'll get it going and we'll run it and we'll tune the suspension and the brakes and we'll make it stop and go around corners. You know, we're getting there. And then when we need more horsepower, we'll dial it in. You know, we'll put some throttle bodies on it, and give an exhaust system, and maybe even chuck a set of cams in it. Yeah. Might hit the magic 250.
Oh, well,
we'll see. But that's a while off.
That's I mean, it was smile-inducing enough. I don't know what that did. There might be some accident going on somewhere. not with the car.
It's got about 150 at the back wheels at the moment. Okay. And it's quite lively, you know.
God, what an experience.
I don't purport it to be anything than what it is than a Lancia Beta Coupe. Yeah. That's what it is. You know, it started out as all the right parts. It's got a VIN, it's registered, it's all kosher, it's got all the right paperwork. But everybody bags you, it's not the right proportions for an 037, the wheelbase is too short, this is too bad. It's not an 037, guys. It's just my interpretation of a car, which I love. And I think its best view is its 3/4 hip view, like most Italian girls.
Yeah. That's the view you got to get right, isn't it? That 3 3/4 looks fantastic. So, right, would you do another one? Not the Stradale. Would you build another car? Are you?
Absolutely. I like Italian cars. I do. I like a lot of the different. I like Maseratis especially. I've had quite a number of Alphas. I would like to buy a Maserati and build it into something completely different. Oh, right. You know, maybe a mid-engine, center cockpit, something.
What sort of engine? What newer engine, or
no,
you pick up
a
quattroporte engine up for pits?
Well, exactly, a quattroporte between 2006 and 2009. I think the selected ones, because they're the ones that the variable valve timing has all been worked out. They're quite strong and robust. They have a normal crank, not a flat plane crank. They are based on the Ferrari engine, so they'd worked out all the bumps out of them by then. and you can pick up one with the Formula One paddle style gearbox pretty cheap. So get one of those. I mean, they're a transaxle, but I'd like to get rid of the coupling and bring them together and actually make it mid-engined.
Right.
Maybe make a space frame out of some of the material that I've got.
You were talking earlier, but could that not be made into some sort of 40s, 50s Formula One body?
Absolutely, open wheeled something, with two old guys with beards driving around, doing nuts things, having a lot of fun.
That would be good. That would be very interesting. Oh, feel like I'm on Alpine Pass there. Well, I was told I was going to get in that driver's seat, but you saw my legs.
I'm sorry, Dave, I just don't think we'd get you in there. And if we did get you in, we weren't going to get you out.
Well, mate, it was just
some major surgery. Anyway.
It was just as much of a joy in that passenger seat going around with you. Thank you very much for letting me come by. Thanks for all the time.
Thanks for
getting me my dinner.
Oh, least I could do.
Lovely. Thank you very much, mate.
Thank you.
Cheers.